Stop drinking that juice. You will heal. 10-year-old Amara stood in the center of the massive, gold-leaf bedroom, her voice trembling but loud enough to echo off the high ceilings. Her small, dark hands were balled into fists as she stared at her uncle, Tund Bakar, the man once known as the Lion of Lagos. Tund, a powerful black billionaire who had built half the skyscrapers in the city, sat slumped in a motorized wheelchair, his once strong arms looking thin and frail. He held a crystal glass filled with bright green kale and ginger juice, his healing blend. Amara's eyes were wide with terror as she watched him tilt the glass toward his lips. Before the liquid could touch his tongue, Amara lunged forward. She slapped the glass out of his hand with all her might. Crash! The crystal shattered into 1,000 pieces against the white marble floor, the green liquid spreading like a poisonous swamp. At that exact moment, the heavy oak doors swung open. Min-hee, Tund's elegant Korean wife, stood there, her face turning into a mask of pure coldness. Amara, what have you done to your uncle's medicine? She hissed, her voice like a snake. But Amara didn't flinch. She pointed a shaking finger at Min-hee and shouted, "The juice is a lie. You are turning him into a ghost." Tund looked between his terrified niece and his beautiful wife, his mind spinning in a dark fog. Comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Subscribe to this channel to support our growth. To understand how a young girl from a small village in Nigeria ended up facing off against a powerful billionaire's wife in a mansion in the hills, we have to go back to the beginning. 6 months ago, Tund Bakar was the most successful man in the country. He was tall, muscular, and had a smile that could light up a stadium. He was a hero to many, known for his kindness and his incredible brain for business. He had everything: private jets, a beautiful wife named Min-hee, and more money than he could ever spend. But everything changed on a rainy Tuesday in October. Tund was visiting one of his new construction sites. As he walked under a heavy iron crane, a thick cable snapped. A massive steel pipe fell from the sky like a spear. It hit Tund directly across his lower back. The doctors said it was a miracle he survived, but the news was grim. "Mr. Bakar, the damage to your spine is permanent," the head surgeon said, looking at the floor. "You will never walk again." Tund's world went black. He went from being a lion to a man who couldn't even put on his own shoes. While his business partners started to fight over his company like vultures, Min-hee stayed by his side. She moved him into their most private mansion and took over his care. She fired the professional nurses, saying they didn't love him like she did. "I will be your strength, Tund," she whispered in his ear every night. "I will make sure you are fed, cleaned, and loved. You don't need anyone else." Min-hee began a strict healing routine. Every morning and every evening, she would personally blend a special green juice. She told everyone it was a secret recipe from her family and soul, full of rare herbs that would help his nerves grow back. At first, Tund seemed okay. But as the weeks turned into months, something strange happened. Instead of getting stronger in his upper body, Tund started to waste away. His memory became foggy. Sometimes, he would look at his own reflection and not recognize the tired, gray-skinned man staring back. He was always sleepy. His hands shook so much he couldn't hold a pen, and he felt a strange numbness spreading from his legs into his chest. When Tund's sister in Nigeria heard how sick he was getting, she became worried. She couldn't travel herself, so she sent her daughter, Amara, to stay with Tund for the Christmas holidays. Amara was a bright, observant girl who spent her days in Nigeria helping her mother in their small pharmacy. She knew what real medicine looked like, and she knew how people were supposed to look when they were recovering. When Amara arrived at the mansion, she was shocked. Her uncle Tund, who used to pick her up and toss her in the air, could barely whisper her name. Amara noticed things that the servants were too afraid to mention. She noticed that Min-hee never drank the green juice herself. She noticed that Min-hee kept a small, black velvet bag hidden inside a locked safe in the kitchen pantry. Most importantly, she noticed that whenever Tund drank the juice, his eyes would roll back in his head and he would fall into a deep, heavy sleep for hours, a sleep so deep that even a loud noise wouldn't wake him. One night, while the house was silent, Amara snuck into the kitchen. She found the secret blender Min-hee used. She ran her finger along the rim and tasted a tiny bit of the leftover residue. It didn't taste like kale or ginger. It tasted like bitter metal and burnt rubber. It tasted like the dangerous heart sedatives her mother kept locked away in the poison cabinet back home. Amara's heart pounded against her ribs. She realized her uncle wasn't just paralyzed from an accident. He was being kept in a chemical cage. She knew she had to tell him, but Min-hee was always watching. Min-hee treated Amara like a nuisance, constantly telling her to stay in her room and play with her dolls. "This is a house of rest, little girl," Min-hee would say with a sharp, fake smile. "Don't disturb your uncle. He is very, very fragile." But the more Amara watched, the more she saw the truth. Min-hee was already signing Tun's name on legal papers while he was in his juice-induced sleep. She was selling his land and moving money into accounts he didn't know about. The tension reached a breaking point on a Friday afternoon. Tun had a major meeting with his board of directors via a video call. He needed to be sharp. He needed to show them he was still the boss. Min-hee walked into the room with a double-sized glass of the green juice. "Drink this, my king," she said smoothly. "It will give you the energy to talk to those greedy men." Tun reached for it, his hand trembling. Amara, standing in the shadows of the hallway, saw the way Min-hee's eyes glinted with a hungry, dark light. This wasn't a juice for energy. It was a dose meant to make him look like a rambling, incompetent fool in front of his partners so Min-hee could take total control of the Bakar Empire. That was the moment Amara knew she couldn't wait any longer. She didn't think about the consequences. She didn't think about being sent back to the village. She ran. She burst into the room just as the glass touched Tun's lips. Crash! The juice was gone, and the secret was out. Now, as the green liquid seeped into the expensive rug, Min-hee stepped toward the little girl, her hand raised as if to strike her. "You little brat. You've ruined his life." Min-hee screamed. But then, something happened that stopped everyone in their tracks. Tund, who hadn't moved his feet in months, suddenly let out a low, guttural groan. His right foot gave a violent, sudden twitch, kicking a piece of the broken glass toward Min-hee's expensive shoes. The room felt like it was freezing cold as everyone stared at Tun's right foot. It had only been a small twitch, a tiny jerk of his toes, but to Tund, it felt like a bolt of lightning had traveled from his brain all the way down to his shoes. For the first time in months, the heavy, dead weight in his legs felt a little lighter. Min-hee froze, her hand still raised to strike Amara. Her eyes darted from Tun's foot to the green puddle on the floor, and for a split second, a look of pure terror flashed across her face. "Tund, my love, you moved," Min-hee whispered, her voice shaking as she tried to force a smile back onto her face. She quickly stepped over the broken glass, trying to block Tun's view of Amara. "The juice. See? It's working. My special blend is finally healing your nerves. But this naughty girl just broke the glass. We must make you another one right away." "No," Amara shouted, stepping out from behind the wheelchair. She wasn't a crying little girl anymore. She was a protector. "Uncle, don't listen to her. The juice didn't make you move. Stopping the juice made you move. It's been putting your body to sleep, making you a prisoner in your own skin." Min-hee's face twisted into a snarl. "Isabella! Joseph!" she screamed, calling for the household security. "Get this child out of here. She's had a mental breakdown. She's scaring her uncle." 2 large security guards in black suits rushed into the room. They looked confused, seeing the billionaire in his chair, the shattered glass, and the tiny Nigerian girl with fire in her eyes. But before they could grab Amara, Tund raised his hand. It was a weak movement, but his voice was like iron. "Wait," he commanded. The guards stopped instantly. Tund looked at his wife, really looking at her for the first time without the fog of the drugs. He noticed how her eyes didn't look worried for him. They looked worried for herself. "Amara," Tund said, his voice raspy. "Why do you say these things? Your Auntie Min-hee has been my only nurse. She hasn't left my side." Amara ran to the bedside table and grabbed a small, silver spoon that Min-hee had used to stir the juice earlier. Uncle Tund, back home in Nigeria, my mama treats people who have been bitten by snakes. She taught me that some things look like water but act like fire. Smell this spoon. It doesn't smell like vegetables. It smells like the bitter seeds that make the heart slow down. Tund took the spoon with a shaking hand. He brought it to his nose. A sharp, chemical scent, like old medicine and vinegar, hit his senses. It was a smell he recognized from the back of his throat every morning, the taste that always preceded his long, dark naps. Min-hee? Tund asked, his voice trembling with a mix of sadness and growing anger. What is in the juice? Vitamins, Tund. Only vitamins, she cried, dropping to her knees and grabbing his hands. The girl is jealous. She wants your money for her family in the village. She's trying to turn you against the only person who loves you. Min-hee turned her head toward the guards. Take her to the guest wing and lock the door. I will call her mother and send her back to Nigeria on the first flight tomorrow. She is dangerous. The guards moved forward, and this time they didn't stop. They grabbed Amara by her arms. Uncle Tund. Check the safe in the pantry. The black bag. Check the black bag. Amara yelled as she was dragged out of the Grand Master bedroom. Her voice echoed down the hallway until the heavy doors slammed shut, leaving Tund alone with the woman he had trusted with his life. Min-hee immediately began cleaning up the glass, her movements frantic. Don't listen to her, honey. The accident was so traumatic for everyone. The poor girl has probably been watching too many scary movies. I'll go make you a fresh drink, and you can take a nice, long nap before your meeting. I don't want to nap, Min-hee, Tund said quietly. He watched her carefully. He noticed how she wouldn't look him in the eye. He noticed how she was shivering, even though the room was warm. I want to see the black bag Amara mentioned. Min-hee stopped scrubbing the floor. The silence in the room was so heavy it felt like it was crushing the air. She slowly stood up, the wet cloth dripping green liquid onto her white silk dress. There is no black bag, Tund. The child is imagining things. Then let's go to the kitchen together, Tund said. I want to see the pantry. Min-hee's expression changed instantly. The sweet, caring wife vanished. She stood up straight and tucked a lock of hair behind her ear, her face becoming as cold as stone. You aren't going anywhere, Tund. You can't even stand up. You are a paralyzed mun in a big house, and I am the one who keeps this house running. Now, you are going to sit there, you are going to be quiet, and you are going to let me take care of you. Because if I leave, who else will stay? Your business partners? They already think you're a vegetable. She walked to the door and turned the golden key, locking it from the inside. She put the key in her pocket and walked toward him. I didn't want it to be like this, but you're making things difficult. I need you to sign the final power of attorney papers today. If you do that, maybe I'll let the girl stay for a few more days. Tund felt a surge of fear. He was trapped in his own bedroom with a woman he realized was a stranger. But then, he felt it again. A tingle. A small, sharp prickle in his left thigh. The fog in his head was clearing more every second. Suddenly, a loud thud came from the balcony outside. The glass doors rattled. A small shadow appeared against the curtains. It was Amara. She hadn't stayed in the guest room. She had climbed the trellis on the outside of the mansion, risking her life to get back to the second floor. She smashed a heavy flower pot against the glass door, and it shattered. Amara jumped into the room, her knees scraped and bleeding, but in her hand, she held something she had snatched from the kitchen before the guards caught her. It was a small, black velvet bag. I found it, Uncle, she screamed. She ripped the bag open and poured the contents onto Tund's lap. Dozens of small, brown glass bottles spilled out, none of them labeled with a doctor's name. This is your healing juice. Min-hee let out a scream of rage and lunged for Amara, her fingers clawing at the air. But as she ran past Tund's wheelchair, Tund's hand shot out. With a strength he didn't know he still had, he grabbed Min-hee's wrist. But Min-hee was fast. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, silver syringe she had been hiding. If you won't drink it, she hissed, I'll just have to give it to you another way. She swung the needle toward Tun's neck. The room was a blur of motion. Minhee's face was no longer beautiful. It was twisted with the desperation of a cornered animal. The silver needle glinted under the chandelier as she swung it toward Tun's neck. Amara let out a piercing scream. No. Uncle, move. Tun felt a rush of adrenaline that burned like fire. For months, he had been told he was a broken mun, a lion with no claws. But as the needle came inches from his skin, his survival instinct took over. He couldn't move his legs, but his grip on Minhee's wrist was like a vice. He twisted her arm away, and the syringe flew out of her hand, skittering across the marble floor. Minhee stumbled back, gasping for air. She looked at Tund, then at Amara, and finally at the black bottle scattered across Tun's lap. She realized the game was almost over, but she wasn't ready to lose her empire. She lunged for the telephone on the nightstand to call her security team to finish what she started, but Amara was faster. The young girl dived for the phone, pulling the cord right out of the wall. You're not calling anyone. Amara panted, her heart thumping against her ribs. Minhee let out a cold, chilling laugh that sent shivers down Amara's spine. You think you've won? Look at him. He can't even stand up to save you. Those guards outside work for me now. I pay their bonuses. I sign their checks. To them, you are just a thief and a crazy child. She walked slowly toward the door, her heels clicking ominously on the floor. I'm going to go get the men. I'll tell them the girl attacked me and tried to poison the master. By the time the police arrive, you'll be on a plane back to Lagos in handcuffs, and Tund will be resting permanently. She reached for the door, but Tund's voice stopped her. It wasn't the voice of a sick mun. It was a roar. Minhee, look at me. She turned, and her jaw dropped. Tund was gripping the armrests of his wheelchair so hard the leather was tearing. His face was beaded with sweat, and his muscles were straining. Slowly, impossibly, his body began to lift. His legs were shaking like leaves in a storm, but he was standing. The Lagos lion was rising. The juice. Tund wheezed, his eyes locked on hers. It only dampened the spark. But the fire is still here. Minhee backed away, her face pale. It's impossible. The dosage was enough to paralyze an elephant. My niece brought the antidote, Tund said, nodding toward Amara. She brought the truth. Tund took one heavy, agonizing step forward. He looked like a giant waking up from a long sleep. But the effort was too much. His knees buckled, and he crashed back into his chair, gasping for breath. Minhee saw her chance. She scrambled for the door, unlocked it, and screamed at the top of her lungs. Guards! Help! He's gone mad. The girl is killing him. The heavy footsteps of the guards thundered down the hallway. Amara ran to her uncle's side, clutching the black bag of evidence. Uncle, they're coming. What do we do? Tund grabbed Amara's hand. Amara, listen to me. The safe, in the floor under my bed. The code is your birthday. Inside is a satellite phone and my original will. Take it and run to the balcony. Hide in the garden. I won't leave you. Amara cried. Go. If they get that bag, the evidence is gone. Tund urged. Amara scrambled under the bed, her small fingers flying across the keypad of the floor safe. Click. It opened. She snatched the phone and the documents. Just as she tucked them into her shirt, the bedroom door burst open. Joseph and Isabella, the head guards, rushed in with their tasers drawn. Minhee pointed a trembling finger at Amara. There she is. She has stolen his private papers. Get her. Joseph looked at Tund, who was slumped in his chair, and then at the little girl by the bed. He had always liked Tund, but Minhee had convinced everyone that Tund was losing his mind. Joseph stepped toward Amara, his face stern. Give me the bag, little girl, Joseph said. No. Amara shouted. She's poisoning him. Look at the bottles. Look at his legs. He stood up, Joseph. He stood up because I stopped him from drinking her green juice. Joseph paused. He looked at the shattered glass and the strange brown bottles. He looked at Min-hee, who was acting far too frantic. Joseph, don't listen to her. Min-hee screamed. Do your job. Joseph looked back at Amara. He saw the bruises on her knees from climbing the trellis. He saw the pure, honest terror in her eyes. He looked at Tund. Sir, is this true? Tund looked up, his eyes clear and piercing. Joseph, who did you swear to protect? The man who built this house, or the woman trying to burn it down? The room went silent. Joseph lowered his taser. But Isabella, the other guard, didn't. She was the one Min-hee had been paying extra. I don't care about stories, Isabella hissed. I care about my paycheck. Isabella lunged for Amara, but Joseph stepped in her way, and a struggle broke out between the two guards. In the chaos, Min-hee grabbed a heavy gold statue from the mantelpiece and snuck up behind Tund, raising it high above her head. If I can't have your money, she whispered, nobody will. Amara saw the shadow move. Uncle, watch out. She dived forward, throwing her small body into Min-hee's legs. Min-hee tripped, and the gold statue crashed into the master control panel of the house's security system. Suddenly, the lights went out. The emergency red lights began to flash, and a loud alarm started blaring. The electronic locks on all the doors and windows snapped shut. The entire mansion was now a high-security cage, and they were all trapped inside with a woman who had lost her mind. The red emergency lights flickered like a heartbeat, casting eerie shadows across the room. The loud wail of the alarm made it hard to think. Min-hee scrambled to her feet, her eyes darting around the darkened room. She knew the house better than anyone, every secret passage, every hidden camera. You think you're safe because the guards are fighting. Min-hee laughed, a sound that was high-pitched and terrifying. This house is a fortress, Tund. And I have the master override. She reached into her neckline and pulled out a small, gold key on a chain, the physical override for the entire mansion. She didn't run for the door. Instead, she ran toward the large walk-in closet. Amara realized she wasn't trying to escape. She was trying to get to the server room hidden behind the clothes. If she deleted the security footage and reset the system, she could pretend the whole night never happened. Joseph! Stop her! Tund yelled, but Joseph was pinned against the wall by Isabella, the two guards locked in a fierce struggle. I've got it, Uncle! Amara cried. She sprinted after Min-hee, her small bare feet silent on the marble. She slipped into the closet just as Min-hee was sliding a secret panel open. But as Amara grabbed Min-hee's arm to stop her, the light from a small monitor inside the server room caught her eye. Amara froze. Her jaw dropped. On the screen was a live feed of the front gate. A black SUV had just pulled up, and a man was stepping out. He was tall, wearing an expensive suit, and he looked exactly like Uncle Tund. Amara whispered, her voice trembling. Tund, hearing her from the bedroom, called out, What is it, Amara? Min-hee saw the screen and her face went whiter than a sheet. She tried to punch the delete all button, but Amara tackled her, and the two tumbled out of the closet and back into the bedroom. Uncle! Amara screamed, pointing at the monitor that was visible through the open closet door. There's a man at the gate. He looks just like you. But you're sitting right here. Tund's heart nearly stopped. He looked at Min-hee, who was trembling on the floor, looking like she had seen a ghost. Min-hee, Tund said, his voice a low growl. Who is that? The twist was more twisted than Tund could have ever imagined. Min-hee didn't answer. She just started sobbing. The front door of the mansion downstairs let out a heavy thud as it was opened with a master code. Moments later, the bedroom door was kicked open. A man walked in. He was the twin image of Tund Bakare. The same height, the same face, the same broad shoulders. But while the Tund in the wheelchair looked kind and tired, this man looked cold and cruel. Hello, brother, the man said, his voice a perfect match for Tund's. Kofi. Tund whispered, his eyes wide with shock. Kofi, you've been in prison for 10 years. How are you here? Kofi Bakare, Tund's twin brother, smiled. It was a shark's smile. He walked over to Min-hee and helped her up, kissing her cheek. I've been out for a long time, Tund. And your beautiful wife has been very helpful. Did you really think she was doing all this for herself? Amara gasped, clutching the satellite phone. She realized the horrible truth. Min-hee wasn't just trying to steal the money. She was trying to replace Tund. With Tund paralyzed and hidden away, Kofi could step into his life, take over the company, and no one in the world would ever know the difference. The green juice wasn't just to make him weak, it was to keep him alive just long enough for Kofi to learn all of Tund's private business secrets. The accident, Tund realized, his voice cracking. The crane, the steel pipe. It wasn't an accident, was it? It took a lot of planning, Kofi said, walking around the room as if he already owned it. But you were always the lucky one, Tund. The golden brother. Well, now the luck has run out. Min-hee, give me the needle. We need to finish this before the police get curious about the alarm. Min-hee picked up the fallen syringe. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. With Kofi there, she felt powerful again. Joseph, seeing the twin brother, backed away in confusion. Isabella immediately bowed her head to Kofi. Sir, the girl has the documents and the phone. Kofi turned his cold eyes toward Amara. Ah, the little niece from the village. You've been a very busy girl, haven't you? Give me the phone, Amara. Now. Amara looked at her uncle Tund. He looked defeated. He looked like a man who had lost his brother, his wife, and his life all in one night. But then, Amara saw Tund's hand. He was subtly pointing toward the satellite phone in her hand. She looked at the screen. The phone was already on. When she had snatched it from the safe, she must have bumped the emergency SOS button. The screen said, Broadcasting Live 2 Becaire Group Global Security. The board of directors, the police, and the entire security team of the Becaire Empire were listening to every word Kofi and Min-hee were saying. I won't give it to you. Amara shouted, backing toward the balcony. Catch her. Kofi roared. Isabella and Kofi lunged for her, but Amara did something brave. She didn't run away. She ran straight toward her Uncle Tund. Uncle, catch. She threw the heavy satellite phone into Tund's lap. Kofi moved to grab his brother, but Tund did something no one expected. He didn't use his legs. He used his massive, billionaire brain. He hit the speaker button and yelled, Authorization code, Lion 99. Activate total lockdown. The room exploded with sound. Iron shutters slammed down over the windows, sealing the balcony. The doors were reinforced with steel bars. The room was now a high-security vault. You fool! Kofi screamed, lunging for Tund's throat. Now we're all trapped in here until the air runs out. No, Tund said, a fierce light in his eyes. We're just trapped in here until the police arrive. And look at the phone, Kofi. The world is watching. Kofi looked down at the phone. His face turned from anger to pure, icy horror. He saw the live stream icon. He saw the thousands of viewers. He saw his own face, the face of a man who had just confessed to attempted murder and kidnapping. But Min-hee wasn't going to go down without a fight. She grabbed the silver needle and screamed, I'll kill you all. She dived toward Amara, the needle pointed straight for the girl's heart. The red emergency lights strobed against the walls, making the room look like it was bleeding. Min-hee's face was distorted with madness as she lunged at Amara. You ruined my life, she shrieked, the silver needle aimed right for the young girl. Amara tried to dodge, but her foot caught on the edge of the plush rug. She fell backward, her eyes wide as the sharp tip of the syringe came closer and closer. But suddenly, a massive shadow blocked the light. Tund Becaire, fueled by a surge of raw, fatherly love for his niece, did the impossible. With a roar that shook the very foundations of the mansion, he threw himself out of his wheelchair. He didn't walk, he lunged, using his powerful arms to propel his body forward like a spear. He collided with Min-hee midair, his weight knocking her sideways. The syringe flew from her hand, shattering against the marble wall, its poisonous contents spraying harmlessly into the air. Stay away from her. Tund barked, his voice vibrating with the authority of the man who had built an empire. He was on the floor, his legs still weak, but his spirit was fully awake. Kofi, seeing his partner fall, let out a snarl. You always were the hero, Tund. But heroes die. He stepped toward his brother, raising a heavy fist. But before he could strike, the satellite phone on the floor let out a loud, electronic chirp. A voice boomed through the speakers. It was the Commissioner of Police. Kofi Becaire. This is the Nigerian Police Force and Global Security. We have tracked the live feed. The mansion is surrounded. We are cutting through the shutters now. Drop your weapons and move away from the victims. Kofi froze. He looked at the iron shutters. He could hear the faint, high-pitched whine of industrial saws cutting through the metal. He looked at Min-hee, who was sobbing on the floor, and then at the camera lens of the phone. The live viewer count was now in the hundreds of thousands. People all over the world had watched the dead twin brother confess to his crimes. The game was over. Kofi dropped his hands, the cold, calculated killer vanishing, replaced by the coward he had always been. He slumped against the wall, covering his face. Isabella, seeing the tide had turned, dropped her taser and put her hands in the air, while Joseph stood guard over Tund and Amara, making sure no one else moved. 10 minutes later, the iron shutters' sparks flew as they were sliced open. Elite tactical officers swarmed through the windows and doors. They moved with lightning speed, pinning Kofi and Min-hee to the ground and clicking heavy steel handcuffs onto their wrists. "Get him to the hospital," Amara cried, rushing to Tund's side. She cradled his head in her lap, her tears dripping onto his forehead. "Uncle, you stayed standing. You saved me." Tund smiled, a genuine, tired smile. "No, Amara. You saved me. You saw the truth when I was too blind to see it." 3 months later. The sun was shining brightly over the Becker estate, but the dark clouds of the past were gone. The mansion, once a place of silence and shadows, was now filled with the sound of music and laughter. Tund Becker sat on a bench in the middle of his lush garden. He wasn't in a wheelchair. He held a pair of sturdy wooden canes, his legs encased in light leg braces. Beside him stood a team of the best physical therapists in Africa, but his most important doctor was a 10-year-old girl with braided hair and a bright yellow dress. "One more step, Uncle Tund. You can do it." Amara cheered, clapping her hands. With a grunt of effort, Tund lifted his right leg and moved it forward. Then his left. He walked 10 feet, 20 feet, until he reached the edge of the fountain. He sat down, breathing hard but grinning from ear to ear. "The doctors said it would take years," Tund panted, wiping sweat from his brow. "But they didn't know I had a Nigerian firecracker pushing me every day." The investigation had revealed the full extent of the horror. Min-hee and Kofi had been using a rare neurotoxin mixed with heavy sedatives to mimic permanent paralysis. If Amara hadn't arrived, Tund's heart would have eventually stopped, and Kofi would have stepped into his life permanently. Now, Min-hee and Kofi were facing life in prison for attempted murder, fraud, and kidnapping. Isabella was also behind bars, while Joseph had been promoted to head of global security for the Becker Group. A car pulled up the long driveway. Amara's mother, Tund's sister, stepped out, running toward them with open arms. The family hugged, a circle of love that no amount of money could buy. "Amara," Tund said, looking at his niece. "You told me I would heal if I stopped drinking that juice. You were right. But I didn't just heal my body. You healed my heart. I forgot what it was like to have a real family." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a document. "I've started a new foundation. The Amara Truth Foundation. It's going to build hospitals and pharmacies across Nigeria, so every child can learn the medicine of the heart, just like you did." Amara hugged her uncle tightly. "I don't need a foundation, Uncle. I'm just happy you're walking." Tund looked up at the sky, feeling the warmth of the sun. He was a billionaire again, but his greatest wealth wasn't in his bank account. It was in the brave little girl who stood by his side. The Lion of Lagos was back, and this time, he wasn't walking alone. Subscribe to this channel to support our growth.